Chapter 1. The Arrival. The road narrowed into nothingness, swallowed inch by inch by the fog that bled from the trees like smoke from a dying fire. Maya Ellis slowed her rental car, headlights smearing useless yellow against the gray abyss ahead. The dashboard lights flickered once, then again, before returning to their sullen glow. Her phone, tossed in the passenger seat, had already gone dark an hour ago. No signal, no maps. No help. Only Raventon. The town slithered out of the mist without warning, rising from the fog like a corpse breaching the surface of still water. Maya's eyes narrowed. It didn't look like a town so much as the husk of one. Sagging porches, broken windows, and storefronts that had long since surrendered to time. The "Welcome to Raventon" sign hung at an angle, its peeling white paint smeared with streaks of brown that looked too much like dried blood. She rolled to a stop in front of the inn, the Hollow Hearth. The letters were faded and hand-painted, crooked, like they'd been scrawled in a hurry or by someone blind. The building leaned to the left, its roof patched with rusted sheets of metal that screamed softly in the breeze. Maya killed the engine. The silence that followed was unnatural. No birds, no distant engines, not even the wind, though she could feel it brushing along her skin like cold fingers. The air smelled like mildew and rot. Salt and something far worse, something metallic and sharp, like the air before a storm. Or a battlefield. She stepped out of the car. The fog moved around her ankles like it noticed. It clung to her legs, coiling and tugging with invisible weight. The moment her boots touched the gravel, she felt it, something deep in her gut, like gravity had warped. Like the town had sunk, and she was stepping down into it. The bell above the inn door let out a sound that could barely be called a chime, more a death rattle. Inside was warmer, but not better. The walls were covered in old wallpaper, curling at the seams like burnt paper. A fire crackled in the hearth at the far end, but the logs weren't wood, at least not any wood Maya recognized. They hissed too much. The flames burned low and blue. Behind the counter sat an old woman. Her skin looked paper-thin, a spiderweb of veins crawling up her neck. Her eyes were cloudy, but her stare was precise, like needles. "You're not from here," she said. Maya offered a tired half-smile. "Just passing through." "No one passes through," the woman replied. "They either stay or they disappear." Silence. Then the woman reached under the counter and slid out a key. Brass, cold to the touch, with the number 6 etched into its head. "No charge," the woman said. "But you stay quiet. The fog don't like noise." Maya hesitated. "What?" The woman blinked once. "Nothing. Room's up the stairs." Maya turned to go, but the woman's hand snapped out and gripped her wrist with a strength that didn't belong in brittle bones. "If you hear it call your name," she said, her voice a whisper made of sand and ash, "don't answer, even if it sounds like someone you love." Maya stared at her. The woman smiled, but it wasn't kind. "The fog remembers." She let go. The room smelled like old damp clothes and mold. The single lamp on the nightstand cast shadows that crawled along the wallpaper like insects. Outside the window, the fog pressed against the glass, thick as flesh. Maya sat on the bed and pulled out her notebook. The pages were water-stained. She stared at her own writing. Bolton disappearances. Locals refuse to speak. Fog rolls in thick every October, no survivors. She set it aside. The window rattled. She stood and approached slowly, drawn by a feeling she couldn't name. Her breath fogged the glass. Then she saw it. Here, tall and still, standing in the street below. No coat, no umbrella, just there. Its head turned, snapping toward her window like a marionette's jerk. She recoiled, heart thudding. She blinked. God. But as she turned back to the room, her body went rigid. Damn footprints. Muddy, dark, wet, leading from the center of the room to the bed where she had just been sitting. She followed them with her eyes, dread clenching around her like a fist. Her gaze stopped at the window. It was open. She had closed it. Maya slowly stepped back. The air inside the room shifted. Heavy, wet. From the hallway, faintly, so faintly it came. Maya. The voice was low, familiar, like a memory dragged across a razor. A whisper wrapped in breath that didn't belong to anyone alive. Her legs didn't want to move, but she ran to the door and locked it, pressing her back to the wood, her chest heaving. The light flickered. The fire downstairs crackled, and from outside the window, deep in the fog, a second voice joined the first. This one was her mother's. Pumpkin? Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. Maya didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed until the sky turned a sickly gray, her back pressed to the wall, a rusted fireplace poker clutched in one trembling hand. The whispering had stopped sometime after midnight, but the air had never lightened. The room still felt full, like something unseen was sitting in the corner, just out of reach, grinning. The footprints had dried, leaving black smears like blood dragged through dirt. Or she hadn't cleaned them. She couldn't touch them. They were proof. She wasn't imagining this. When the clock in the hall struck 6, though it hadn't worked when she arrived, Maya stood and forced herself to move. She threw on her coat, her boots still damp from the fog, and left the inn without breakfast, without a word to Eddie. The old woman was sitting in the exact same spot, eyes open but unmoving, like she hadn't blinked all night. Outside, Raventon was quieter than before. Too quiet. No voices, no dogs, no wind. The fog hung like wet gauze, pale and low, pressing into her pores, making the air taste like mold and rust. She headed to the town's archive building, a low, crumbling structure sagging under its own decay. The front door groaned like a dying animal when she pushed it open, and the scent hit her instantly. Old paper, mildew, and something sharp beneath it. Copper. Rot. She descended a narrow staircase into the basement archives, where the air thickened and the electric lights flickered with every step. Filing cabinets stood like coffins, dented and dusty. The floor creaked beneath her, but the sound was swallowed almost instantly by the gloom. She found a stack of ancient newspapers, their edges yellowed and curled. The ink had bled in places, making names unreadable. But what she could read chilled her blood. October 16, 1985. 5. Vanish in fog. October 18, 1965. Locals mourn unsolved disappearances. October 1995. Calling season. Claims more. Every 20 years. Always in October, always during the fog. Thing to always take in. She flipped faster, hands trembling. Then she found it. Local girl vanishes. Nowhere announced. Maya Ellis. Age 9. Last seen near the cliffs. Weather conditions, heavy fog. Her breath caught in her throat. There was a photo, faded, grainy, but unmistakable. Her own face. Younger, thinner, smiling wide in a school uniform. But she didn't remember this picture, didn't remember the cliffs, didn't remember being here before. And yet, her hand went to the back of her neck, where the skin suddenly ached, like something under the surface had twitched. The article said she had disappeared during a trip to the coast. Her parents had filed reports, search parties had combed the shoreline. Nothing was ever found. Not a shoe. Not a scream. Only fog. She left the archive building feeling hollow, the photograph burned into her mind like an afterimage. The fog outside had thickened again, making the streets ripple in strange, watery motion. The buildings didn't look the same. Their angles were wrong, their doors too narrow, their windows too dark. She didn't remember turning down this street, but her feet carried her forward. She stopped in front of a rusted gate. A small house sat behind it, squat, rotting, covered in ivy. The porch light flickered dimly, the bulb buzzing like a dying fly. A sign on the mailbox, H. Boone. She remembered the name from the records, Harold Boone. He'd lost a brother in '85, a son in 2005. The door opened before she could knock. Arrow stood in the doorway like he'd been waiting for her. His eyes were bloodshot and sunken deep into his skull, like they were trying to hide. "You're the girl," he rasped. "The one who came back." Maya stepped forward, her voice barely working. I think I was taken in 2005? Harold didn't respond at first. He stepped aside, motioning her in with a slow, shaky hand. Inside, the house was dark, every curtain drawn. The wallpaper was the same as the inn, aged, bubbling, clawed in places. Photographs hung crooked on the walls, all coated in a thin layer of dust. Most were missing faces. Some had been burned. In the living room, a table was covered in maps of the coastline, dates scribbled in red pen, small black X's marking parts of the town she hadn't seen. "And they don't just disappear," Harold said. "They're called." "By what?" Maya asked. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. "By the fog. By the thing inside it. The hunger." He pulled out a box from beneath the table. Inside were dozens of small items, buttons, hair ties, worn children's shoes, rotting dolls. "Sir, what's left," he whispered. "From the ones it took. My son left his coat behind, just laid it on the grass, walked into the fog barefoot, said he heard his mama's voice. She's been dead for 20 years. Maya's hand curled into a fist. Her knuckles went white. Harold leaned in close. His breath smelled like sour milk and grief. "It marks you. If it wants you, it gets in your bones. Makes you forget who you are until it's time to come back." He paused, his voice dropping to a wheeze. "And now you're back." Back in her room that night, Maya found an envelope on her pillow. She hadn't locked the door. Inside the envelope was a photo, old, wrinkled, and wet. It showed a child, maybe 9 years old, standing at the edge of a cliff. Mist rolled in from behind her, swallowing the horizon. She was staring toward the camera, but her face was indistinct, blurred by motion. Or maybe something else. But Maya knew. She knew. It was her. On the back of the photo, written in smudged ink, "You were here before." That night the foghorn blew again. 3 long, low howls that made the glass tremble in the window. But there was no lighthouse. Not anymore. She lay in bed, unable to move. The whisperers returned. Dozens of voices, hundreds, all whispering one word: remember. And when she sat up, gasping for air, a child was standing at the foot of the bed, ripping, eyes wide, pale and bloated like she'd been pulled from the sea. And she had Maya's face. Want me to continue this tone into Chapter 3 next? Things are about to get darker. Chapter 3. Beneath the Surface. The girl didn't move. She stood at the foot of the bed, soaked through to the skin, her dress clinging to her bloated frame. Her hair hung in heavy ropes, tangled with brine and seaweed. Water dripped onto the floor, slow, steady. It pooled around her bare feet and slid in thin streams toward the cracked floorboards. Maya couldn't speak, couldn't scream. Her throat closed like someone was slowly pressing a hand against her windpipe. The child's lips were slightly parted, revealing pale gums and tiny teeth that were too sharp, like they had been filed down to points. And her eyes, God, her eyes were empty, not dead, not gone, drowning, like she was still underwater, and Maya was watching her die all over again. The girl tilted her head. Then she mouthed one word. Down. The light bulb above Maya's head exploded. When she snapped awake the next morning, sunlight stabbed through the window, blinding and cold. Her bed was soaked, not with sweat, but with salt water. Her jeans, still folded on the chair, were damp. Her boots were full of sand. The girl was gone, but the puddle remained. She said nothing to Edith as she left the inn. The old woman was stirring something in a black pot behind the counter, thick and gray and bubbling. She didn't look up. Outside, Raventon was dissolving, not metaphorically, literally. Conference rooms had warped overnight, bending at unnatural angles, like heat had melted their frames. Signs had changed, letters smeared or rearranged. The post office now read, "Lost Office." The diner's windows were filled with condensation, but behind the glass, Maya saw people eating nothing. Empty plates, chewing, smiling. Their eyes never blinked. She walked faster. The fog wrapped around her legs like a leash. Her skin prickled. She felt watched. Not by people, but by the town itself. Every inch of Raventon breathed, groaned, pulled. She reached the edge of town and found a trail leading through the woods, a narrow, overgrown path half swallowed by brambles. It felt familiar. Branches scraped at her arms, thorns tore at her jeans. She didn't stop. The path ended at a rusted iron grate, half buried in moss and dirt. An old tunnel entrance. She dropped to her knees, clawing at the soil, fingers raw and bleeding. The earth tasted like copper and rot. The grate groaned as she pried it open. Cold, stagnant air hissed out, thick with mildew and the unmistakable stench of decay. She descended slowly, her flashlight barely piercing the darkness. The walls of the tunnel were stone, slick with damp. Roots jutted from the ceiling like broken teeth. The deeper she went, the more the air changed, grew wrong, heavy, close, like something was breathing just behind her, matching her every step with its own. After what felt like hours, the tunnel opened into a circular chamber. And there, etched into the walls in perfect rows, were names. Hundreds of them, carved into the stone. Some were old, worn almost to nothing. Others were sharp and fresh, as if chiseled yesterday. She stepped closer, running her fingers over them. Jonathan Boone, Sarah Dunley, Emma Cartwright, Daniel Ellis. Her father's name? She stumbled back, heart hammering in her chest. Further down, she found a smaller name, in smaller letters. Lower on the wall, as if carved by a child's hand, Maya Ellis. October 17, 2005. Her name? Her date. It wasn't a warning. It was a record. She fell to her knees, breath rasping through her throat. And then she saw it, half buried in the mud beneath the wall. A locket. She dug it out with shaking hands, mud caked under her nails. The silver was blackened with age, but the clasp opened with a snap. Inside, a photo, water-damaged but intact. A woman holding a child. Her mother, holding her. The woman's eyes were wild with fear. On the back, scratched in something that looked like fingernails. "Don't forget again." Maya's flashlight flickered. A sound slithered through the tunnel, low, wet breathing. Then a whisper. "You left us." She turned sharply, light shaking. Figures were moving in the shadows now, not walking but gliding. Limbs too long, heads tilted. Some still wearing fragments of clothing, others naked and slick with mud, skin pale, veined, eyes weeping brine. The taken. They whispered in 100 broken voices, overlapping like a dying choir. "Come, you remember now? You belong with us." Maya backed against the wall, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The locket fell from her hand, landing with a soft thud in the mud. Her flashlight went out. The whispers roared like wind in her ears, and then silence. A hand touched her shoulder. Cold. Wet. She screamed. The tunnel shook. Stone cracked. Water rushed in, fast and violent, as if the sea had broken through the earth to reclaim what was owed. And in that moment, just before the waters swallowed her whole, she saw something glowing at the far end of the tunnel. A shape, a stone, jet black, veined with light. I'll say, alive. And it knew her name. Shall we dive straight into Chapter 4, where the town begins to collapse and the calling truly begins, or do you want to add more detail or a second perspective in the next chapter? Chapter 4. The Calling. The first thing Maya tasted was salt. Her lungs burned as she choked awake, gasping and retching. She lay on cold stone, water lapping at her sides, her clothes soaked and heavy with filth. The tunnel had spat her out somewhere, an outlet near the cliffs, where the sea surged in and out of a black hollow carved into the earth. She dragged herself to her feet. Above, the sky was the color of rotted meat. The fog was thicker now, alive, moving with purpose. It pulsed like breath, drawing in and out, threading through the twisted trees and broken homes of Raventon. The town groaned under it, wood creaking, nails snapping, roofs slouching like dying animals. Maya stumbled back into town, her shoes squelching with every step. She passed the post office. The door was gone, and something darker than shadow spilled from the threshold. The inside smelled of wet fur and rotting flowers. She didn't look. At the diner, people still sat in their booths, but their faces were wrong, unmoving, slack, their skin waxy and pale. One man sat chewing nothing, his mouth opening and closing, blood dripping from the corners of his lips. His eyes followed her as she passed. She walked faster. The air changed as the first foghorn sounded, a deep, guttural moan that shook the windows. That shook her bones. There was no lighthouse in Raventon. There hadn't been one for years. But the horn called out again, and this time the fog answered. It poured in, not like weather but like a tide of bodies, limbs in the mist, teeth, grinning faces with hollow eyes, children with waterlogged skin and bloated bellies. They drifted down Main Street like puppets on invisible strings. Some townsfolk ran. Others knelt in the street and began to pray. One man, wrapped in a fisherman's coat, took a knife to his throat and opened himself like a sack of meat. The fog wrapped him like a lover and took him. Maya backed against the wall of the inn, heart pounding so hard she couldn't hear her own thoughts. A scream escaped her lips, but it was devoured instantly, swallowed by the fog. From within, a voice called her name. Not a whisper this time. I command. Maya. She turned to run and collided with Edith. The old woman's hands were streaked with ash, her eyes rimmed red like she hadn't slept in weeks. You've seen it now, Edith rasped. The relic. Maya nodded, breathless. What is it? A wound, she said. A hole in the world where something came through, or maybe something was buried. No one really knows anymore. It took my family. It takes what it wants, Edith said. It always has. Maya gripped her by the shoulders. Then help me destroy it. Edith gave a small, broken laugh. You think we haven't tried? She looked up at the sky. The clouds were roiling now, black and red, bleeding through the fog like bruises in motion. The town made a pact long before you were born, Edith whispered. It needed blood, It wanted memories. So, every 20 years, we gave it what it asked for. A child. A sacrifice. Maya's stomach twisted. You gave me... Edith's voice cracked. Your mother fought us. She tried to run. That's why it took her to. Maya's hands shook with rage. You made me forget, she said. We had to, Edith said. If you remembered, the relic would find you. And now it has. The foghorn wailed again. This time, the earth trembled with it. Maya looked out into the street and saw the fog rip open the world. A black fissure cracked the ground from the center of town outward. Buildings collapsed in silence. People vanished mid-scream. A man tried to leap across the gap. He fell, and the mist swallowed him with a sound like bones snapping underwater. From the fissure rose the Taken. No longer human. Not ghosts. Something else. They had mouths where their eyes should be. Their fingers were long and broken at the joints, curled inwards like claws. Some walked on all fours. Others floated. All of them stared at her with empty, hungering recognition. She went through the collapsing town, through the screaming fog, up the hill toward the cliffs. The lighthouse ruins stood silhouetted against the rotting sky, bent like a kneeling giant. The sea below boiled with black foam, waves slamming against the jagged rocks with a sound like thunder swallowed by the earth. At the top of the cliffs, Maya stopped to catch her breath. Then she saw it. The relic, half buried in the broken stone, just beyond the lighthouse foundation. It was larger now, awake. Veins of crimson light pulsed through its obsidian skin. Fog wept from its cracks like blood. As she stepped closer, she felt it. In her skull, in her teeth, the pressure, thick and growing. Inside the relic, she could see faces, trapped, writhing, screaming silently. They pressed against the surface like souls suffocating in a coffin. She saw her mother, her father, herself. The child's voice echoed in her skull. You never left. You just forgot. Her hands moved on their own, reaching toward the stone. The fog whispered around her, close now. Come home. Her fingers brushed the surface, and the world went silent. Chapter 5. Return to the deep. The instant Maya touched the stone, time cracked. The world shuddered, like it had been struck from below, and all sound drained from the air. Her fingers burned where they met the relic's skin, so cold it sizzled. She tried to scream, but no sound came, not even her breath, not even her heartbeat. Only the fog breathed now. The relic pulsed beneath her palm, alive and impossibly ancient. It opened, not with movement, but revelation. A scene split down the surface, spilling light so dark it defied color, black-tinted with crimson, a bleeding void. Inside, Maya saw memories, not just her own, but hundreds, thousands, swirling like oil in water. A child drowning. A woman being pulled from her bed by arms made of fog. A man walking into the sea with a smile and an empty gaze. Her mother screaming her name through smoke and rain and fire. And then she saw herself, 9 years old, barefoot on the cliffs, staring into the fog with glassy eyes. A rope of mist curling around her ankle like a leash. They had offered her. She was sacrificed, not to protect the town, but to feed it. To feed this. The relic's voice filled her mind, not a whisper now. A storm. You are of us. You were made to remember. You were made to return. Maya's legs buckled. She collapsed to her knees, choking on the stench of brine and rot and fire. Blood ran from her ears. Her mouth tasted like rust and old teeth. The fog gathered around her, solidifying into shapes. hulking forms that moved like men but bore no faces, no mouths, only eyes, hundreds, blinking wetly from their skin, their arms, their chests. They circled her, and the relic, a hand emerged, elongated, bent backward at the knuckles. It reached for her, beckoning. Its nails were black and chipped, the skin beneath torn and blistered. Maya screamed and stumbled backward, but something inside her pulsed in rhythm with the stone. Her skin prickled. Her veins felt wrong, like something was moving inside them, crawling. The cliff beneath her feet cracked. She looked back toward the town, only to see that Raventon was gone. Erased. The buildings had caved in on themselves, the streets were gone, the people were gone. Nothing remained but fog and ruin. The sea roared beneath her, a gaping maw of waves and white foam. The sky above twisted like torn flesh, streaked with black lightning. Maya rose slowly, breathing through clenched teeth. She still clutched the iron rod from the tunnel, a broken crowbar, rusted and heavy with purpose. She looked at the relic, looked at the hand. "Not this time," she hissed. She ran. Every step felt like it took her through molasses, the fog thickening with each motion. The figures screamed as she passed, but the sound came from inside her ears, inside her bones. She raised the crowbar and brought it down with all the force she had left. Crack! The relic split. A hair-lying fracture ran down its surface, and a howl erupted, not from any mouth, but from the world itself. My stomach dropped to the floor. The cliff shook. The fog screamed. The sea climbed higher. She struck again. Crack! Blood poured from the fracture, not red but gray, thick and steaming. Inside the relic, the faces convulsed. Her mother's eyes locked with hers. And that, "Please," her mother mouthed. "Don't forget me again." Maya's hands faltered. The crowbar clattered to the stone. The relic pulsed once, twice, then everything stopped. Silence, the figures, the wind, even the sea. Maya turned, slowly. The black hand had retracted, and in its place stood herself. The girl version, 9 years old, hair matted, skin cold, eyes blank. "You left me here," the child said. Maya shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No, they took you. They didn't take me," the girl said, voice flat. "They left you." The child stepped closer. Their bodies began to mirror. Same height, same shadow, same soul. "You broke the cycle," the girl whispered. "But something still has to stay." Maya stumbled back. No, I won't." The ground cracked beneath her. The sea rushed in. The relic exploded in light. Screams echoed from every direction. Maya turned to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The fog wrapped her ankles, her wrists, her throat, and thought. And then silence. The fog receded. The sea calmed. The cliffs stood bare and broken. Raventon was gone, and so was Maya. All that remained was the relic, now split in two, dormant once more. To be continued. Would you like me to sketch ideas for a sequel, or an epilogue that hints Maya might not be entirely gone, just changed? Chapter 6. The Hollow Girl. Fog blanketed the cliffs like a burial shroud. Waves whispered below, soft and rhythmic, like something alive, like breathing. Where Maya had stood, where she had screamed, fought, bled, there was now only silence. The shattered remnants of the relic lay buried in black earth, steaming. Blood-black roots sprouted from its cracks, writhing weakly, pulsing in slow agony. The sky had lost its color. No sun, no storm, just a pale void where light once lived. And in that stillness, she came back, but not the same. Maya rose from the ruins like smoke rising from a corpse, her skin the color of damp stone. Her eyes opened slowly, glassy and distant, pupils dilated until the whites had vanished completely. Her veins glowed faintly beneath her skin, thread-thin rivers of fog curling just beneath the surface, moving when she breathed. She blinked. Once. A tremor rippled across the ground. Far off, crows scattered into the blank sky. Her memory fractured, pieces missing. Others sharpened into crystal. She remembered the tunnels, the names carved in stone, the girl with her face, the fog wrapping around her like a womb. She remembered being devoured. Now she was hollow. The wind whistled through her like she no longer had weight, like she no longer truly belonged to the earth. She walked barefoot along the edge of the cliff. The grass curled away from her feet, stones blackened in her wake. Her breath, if she still breathed, left no steam, but the fog moved with her as if pulled by gravity. Down the path, toward what remained of Raventon. The town was no longer a town. It had folded in on itself. Buildings crushed into splinters, foundations devoured by roots of fog. Only a few skeletal homes stood, leaning like drunkards, windows gaping like eye sockets. And in the center of it all, where the church used to be, a crater, a wound, a gaping circular mouth in the ground, lined with jagged stone and wet, pulsing moss. It breathed. It hungered. And from deep inside came a rhythmic thump, like a heart that refused to die. Maya stepped to the edge. She looked down. Inside the darkness, something shifted. A shape, a shadow, a flexion. Hers, but younger, smiling. And behind that smile, rows of jagged teeth. From the woods beyond the ruins, something stirred. A survivor. A boy, maybe 15, thin, scraped raw, face caked in dirt and dried blood. He watched from behind a collapsed fence, eyes wide as they fixed on Maya. He didn't understand what she was, not yet, but he could feel the air around her thinning, could taste the copper of her presence on his tongue, could feel his memories slipping, names falling away from him like leaves in a winter wind. He stepped back, snapped a branch beneath his boot. Maya turned, her head tilted. Not human. Too slow. Too deliberate. The fog thickened, responding to her movement, twisting, The boy ran. Branches clawed at his skin. The trees bent in unnatural angles. Birds fell dead from the sky as he passed. His name echoed behind him, spoken in dozens of voices, all wrong. David. Don't forget. He tripped and hit the ground hard. The air buzzed with pressure. A shadow moved overhead, silent, immense. He rolled over and saw her, Maya, standing no more than 10 feet away. Her skin cracked around her eyes, faint lines spreading like lightning across marble. Her mouth opened, but her jaw didn't move. The sound came from beneath her skin. "We remember you." The boy screamed. He didn't see the fog wrap around his leg. He didn't feel the ground open. He only felt cold. Back at the cliffs, the relic's shattered pieces pulsed once, and in the silence that followed, a heartbeat echoed through the town. Not human, not gone, just waiting. Chapter 7. The Outsider. They told Caleb not to come. Old-timers at the gas station 20 miles out had gone pale when he mentioned Raventon. Nothing but ghosts out that way, one of them had muttered, shaking his head. Even the roads forget it's there. He'd laughed, at first, but now, as his jeep rattled over a crumbling coastal road slick with algae and thyme, the joke sat heavy in his stomach. The fog came without warning. One moment he was driving under a blanket of gray sky. The next, it was as if someone had poured cement over the world. The air thickened, the wheel jerked once beneath his fingers, and just like that, the engine died. Silence pressed in like a pillow over the face of the earth. Caleb sat in the stillness, the key useless in the ignition, headlights swallowed whole. The only sound was his own breath, and even that felt borrowed. He stepped out of the jeep and was immediately drenched in wet, soupy air. The fog slithered up his legs like it had fingers. It tasted wrong, not like water vapor, but like something sour, rotting, organic, like breath that didn't belong to anyone living. He pulled his coat tighter and started walking, following what looked like the remnants of a path. Broken fence posts jutted from the ground like bones. Every few steps he found something stranger. A doll's arm, long buried and swollen from rot. A child's shoe, still laced. A rusted bicycle frame twisted around the trunk of a tree. And then he saw the sign, Raventon, or what was left of it. The wood was burned through in the middle. The letters were scorched black. Something had clawed through the bottom of the sign like it had been trying to crawl out of it. Beyond the sign, the town was dead. Homes collapsed like paper under rain. Trees bent inward, their branches grown in spirals toward the town center. Every window stared like a lidless eye. The buildings leaned together like conspirators. Fog clung to the ground in pools, thick enough to hide ankles, maybe bodies. Caleb stepped over a crumbling stone wall and nearly gagged at the stench. Brine, mold, copper, rot. The air smelled like a drowned corpse pulled from a well after too long in the dark. He didn't call out. Instinct told him not to. Instead, he made his way down what remained of the main street. There were signs still, post office, general goods, school, but the letters bled down the wood like they'd been painted in something warm and alive. Something watched him, not from windows, not from shadows, from beneath. The ground was wrong here, soft, too soft, like flesh, like skin. He stopped in front of the church, or what was left of it. The steeple had collapsed into itself. The front doors were gone. Something had burned words into the remaining boards. We fed it. It fed us. Beyond that, in the middle of the square, a great black pit yawned open in the earth. Caleb stepped to the edge and felt his stomach twist. It wasn't a hole. Not exactly. It was a wound. Pulsing. Weeping fog. And breathing. A steady rise and fall like lungs far beneath the soil. From deep within the pit came a low sound, like a voice trying to form inside wet gravel. Caleb stumbled back. Then he heard the whisper. Caleb. He froze. "Who's there?" he called. But even as he said it, the name in the voice was wrong. Too wet. Too slow. It came again. Louder. He turned and ran, just as the first figure stepped out of the fog. She looked human, at first. Pale skin, soaked hair, bare feet dragging along the mud, but her mouth never moved, and yet her voice filled the air. "You remembered us." Caleb backed away. His legs trembled. Her eyes were solid black, no iris, no white, just twin pools of infinite depth. Then he saw the veins glowing faintly under her skin. Fog slithered through them like smoke in a glass tube. And he recognized her. Not personally, not by name, but he had seen her picture, online, in an old missing persons article from 20 years ago. Maya Ellis. She raised one hand, palm open. Behind her, more figures emerged. Children, elders, people missing parts, lips, limbs, eyes, but all smiling, all soaked in fog. Who remembered? Caleb turned to run. Too late. The fog rose, solid, grabbing, and from within it came the last thing he would ever hear. Something always stays. Chapter 8. The Inside Out. Somewhere deep in the earth, Maya was dreaming. Or remembering. It was hard to tell the difference now. Her body floated in blackness, a womb of fog and cold water. She could no longer feel the boundary between skin and air. Her flesh was soft, porous, absorbing everything. The fog had seeped into her long ago, but now it had rooted, wrapped around her spine, curled through her lungs, woven itself into the folds of her brain. She wasn't dying. She was changing. A heartbeat pulled her back. Not hers. The relic's. Though shattered, its rhythm still echoed in her veins. She sat up slowly, bones cracking in slow protest. Her limbs didn't feel like limbs, they felt borrowed. Like the body she wore was a costume, stitched together too quickly, not quite tailored to fit. Her fingers were too long now. Her skin was no longer skin, it looked like stone soaked in seawater, translucent in places, veined with dark fog that coiled beneath the surface like ink suspended in jelly. She stared at herself in a broken shard of glass. Her mouth no longer opened to speak, yet the fog spoke through her, 1,000 tongues pressed against her throat like parasite. Behind her, the pit groaned. The town had gone quiet. It wasn't dead. It was listening. Maya walked through Raventon with bare feet, the mud sucking at her heels with each step. Wherever she passed, the fog thickened, curling into doorways, seeping through the boards of collapsed homes like mold, eager to grow. And they followed her, to take in, twisted, brown things with bones poking through pallid skin, mouths sealed shut or stretched too wide, eyes gouged out and replaced with glistening black pearls. They moved in rhythm with her, silent, obedient, not worshipping her, not fearing her, recognizing her full face. One of them fell to its knees at her feet and offered her something. Still warm, still twitching. She took it gently and placed it on the steps of the old town hall like an offering, and the fog pulsed in approval. The earth trembled again. Beneath the town the relic stirred, its pieces writhing in the soil, calling for more. It was broken, yes, but it wasn't destroyed. It never could be. Not while something still remembered. Maya remembered everything now. The first time she stood at the cliff's edge, the town surrounding her, her mother's screams drowned by the fog, her name etched in stone before she was even gone. She had been chosen, marked, branded, but they hadn't meant to create a monster. They had meant to hide one. The fog thickened to a storm around her as she returned to the church ruins. At the altar, half buried in wet moss and black roots, she saw a small, curled figure. A child, not taken, not twisted. New. The boy from earlier, Caleb, still breathing. Barely. His skin pale, veined with the beginnings of fog infection, his eyes fluttered open at her approach. He gasped. His voice was like wind across broken glass. You're still in there, right? She crouched before him, her expression unreadable. No, she said. Or rather, the fog did. Her jaw didn't move. Sound poured out of her like smoke from a furnace. I was in there. She continued. But that girl is gone. You're looking at what's left. He tried to crawl back, but his arms failed him. She reached out. He flinched. But all she did was gently press her fingers to his temple. Irages poured into his skull like boiling water, the relic opening like a wound, screaming mouths inside her, 1,000 names carved into stone, bleeding forever. The earth's core, a black heart pulsing beneath Raventon, whispering to the bones of the dead. He wept. No tears came, only fog. Hundreds. "Why are you showing me this?" he whispered. She leaned closer, her face now inches from his. The skin around her mouth had split, revealing rows of teeth beneath her cheeks. Not human. Not anymore. "So you'll remember," she whispered, her breath freezing the blood in his veins. "And when you scream for help, if you escape, your voice will carry my story." She stood and walked away, the fog parting for her like curtains drawn before a queen. Behind her, the boy lay trembling, whispering her name over and over like a prayer. Maya, Maya. And far beneath the town, the relic pulsed. Chapter 9. A Map of Scars. Caleb ran. At least he tried. His legs were half dead beneath him, the muscles sluggish and brittle, like they didn't belong to him anymore. His shoes were gone. His feet slapped against the damp ground, each step peeling up mud and skin. The fog bit at his heels, cold, wet, and aware. It wasn't just mist anymore. It was flesh. It followed him in pulses, tendrils curling along the ground like worms hungry for a host. With every breath, it filled his lungs. With every blink, it grew thicker, more solid, until the world narrowed to 10 feet of vision and a constant sound of something moving just behind him. He didn't dare look back. He passed the remnants of the Raventon school. The front doors gaped open like a dislocated jaw, and the bell above it rang once, soft and hollow. Inside, children stood in rows. Their eyes were gone, their mouths sewn shut with seaweed thread. They rocked back and forth in unison, heads tilted to the ceiling, as if listening to something just above the roof. When Caleb passed, they stopped and turned toward him in perfect silence. He didn't stop to watch what came next. His fingers were bleeding by the time he clawed over the collapsed fence at the edge of town. His knuckles scraped bone. His vision was starting to blur. The fog wasn't just outside him anymore. He was inside, whispering, rewriting. He stumbled into the woods, branches cutting his cheeks, thorns carving sigils into his arms. He didn't care. The pain was real. It was still his. As long as he bled, he was still Caleb. But something was wrong. The trees were all bending the wrong way. Not toward the sky, but toward him. Their limbs arched low, curling like crooked fingers, leaves dripping black water that hissed when it touched his skin. The bark pulsed as he passed, and he realized it wasn't bark at all. It was skin, knotted, veined, breathing. The forest was part of it now. Raventon had spread. Hours, or minutes, or years later, he collapsed at the edge of the old road. His vision doubled. His fingers trembled. The whispers in his head were louder now, weaving through his thoughts like threads through an open wound. Go back. You saw too much. You are a map now. A map made of scars. Caleb screamed. He dug his nails into his arms and tore down to the raw meat beneath, trying to cut the voices out. He scratched until he bled, until he wept, until he collapsed face first in the mud. Still, the fog did not stop. He wrapped around him, gently this time, lovingly, like a mother tucking in a fevered child. He sobbed, whispering her name again and again, like it would save him. Maya. Maya, please. He didn't see the figure crouch beside him. He didn't feel her fingers touch his scalp, but he heard her. You made it far, Maya said, voice low and wet and thick with rot. He tried to lift his head, but his neck had frozen, tendons locked like rusted wire. His body no longer obeyed. It belonged to her. She ran her fingers across his forehead. They were no longer warm, no longer human. Something sharp was growing beneath her skin, pushing up in bony ridges. Her eyes glowed faintly now, two dull lanterns flickering with memory and madness. "I showed you what I am," she said, "and still you ran." "I wanted to remember," Caleb rasped, "but not like this." Maya leaned closer. Her breath smelled of the ocean floor, salt and decay and things buried in pressure. "You remember now," she said. "That's enough." Then she opened her mouth, and the fog spilled out. It poured into Caleb's ears, his eyes, his mouth. He choked on it, screamed into it. It wrapped around his skull like a crown and squeezed until his vision went black. He woke in the road. Queasy. No Maya. No figures. No sound. Just his own ragged breathing and the soft, distant moan of the foghorn. He pushed himself up with broken fingers and looked back toward the woods. Raventon was gone. Just trees. Just silence. And yet, when he touched his chest, he felt it. A pulse that wasn't his own. Something had been placed inside him. He stood slowly, broken, shivering, but alive, and far away, behind clouds, behind time, behind the last breath of fog, the relic beat once more. Chapter 10. Something in the air. The fog didn't stay. It traveled. It rolled over the hills like spilled blood, slithering through the valleys and across the withered grass, slipping beneath the canopy of pine and birch like a silent predator. No fanfare. No thunder. Just silence and slow, suffocating invasion. 15 miles east of Raventon, the small town of Glenmere woke to gray skies and a strange smell in the wind. It wasn't just moisture, it wasn't just sea salt. It was something older. Something wrong. The morning fog tasted like copper. At 8:23 a.m., the first report came through dispatch. A woman found her husband standing naked in the backyard, staring into the woods, eyes rolled completely white. When she touched his arm, he turned slowly and whispered, "You remember now." He then bit off the tip of his own tongue and swallowed it whole. Bobbied by 9:0. The fog had reached the school. Children wept without knowing why. Several collapsed in the hallway, their eyes bleeding. One boy was found drawing hundreds of tiny circles on the walls of the gymnasium, muttering, "It sees everything. It sees everything," over and over, until his lips split. By noon, Glenmere was choking. Birds dropped from the sky, twitching. Streetlights shattered without cause. Electrical lines hummed with a low, droning frequency that made teeth ache and eyes water. Dogs howled, cats fled. In the woods, something screamed. A deep, guttural sound that rumbled under the ground like it had crawled out of the ocean floor. The town was remembering, and something beneath the fog was listening. In an empty gas station on the town's edge, Caleb sat in a locked bathroom stall, body shaking, clothes soaked in sweat and fog water. The mirror above the sink had shattered hours ago, and yet every shard reflected a different version of him, older, younger, rotting. He pressed his forehead to his knees. You escaped. You lived. You lived. But the rhythm inside him said otherwise. It pulsed beneath his ribs like a second heart. And when he finally raised his head, his nose was bleeding a thick black sludge that steamed when it hit the floor. "He's coming," he whispered. Back in Raventon, Maya stood at the edge of the pit, arms raised to the sky. Her body no longer belonged to gravity. Her feet hovered inches from the soil, her spine arched in slow, inhuman angles. The veins along her neck pulsed with sick light. Her hair floated as if under water, drifting in currents of fog that oozed from her pores. And beneath her, the relic began to sing. The song was not melody. It was vibration. It was memory. Every scream the stone had consumed. Every name it had devoured. Every soul it had stitched into the skin of the town. All screaming at once. We are the fog. We are the forgotten. We're coming home. Maya opened her mouth, and a sound like a siren built from human voices howled across the cliffs, warping the clouds, shaking the trees, cracking the very air. Back in Glenmere, glass exploded outward from every window as the pressure wave hit. Children clutched their ears and screamed. Men dropped to their knees, vomiting black bile. Women clawed at their faces, tearing their own memories out through fingernails and teeth. The fog rolled through every crack, every mouth, every lung. And in its wake, people began to forget. Not everything, only what mattered. Nay, faces, Iquin, themselves. They wandered the streets like unfinished prayers, mumbling pieces of who they once were. Miles away, at the edge of the woods, a radio crackled in a ranger's hut. Only one message came through. It started in Raventon. It never stopped. And now, we are all remembering.